Welcome back to the Black Hills and Eastern Railroad, everybody. Today we're going to talk about a couple of announcements that came out of the Springfield show here last weekend. These announcements have me super stoked as a Burlington Northern modeler, as a HO scale guy in general, and as a watcher of the model railroad industry as a whole.
Black Hills and Eastern Railroad, from the plains of the Sioux Empire to the heart of the hills.
The first announcement concerns early round roof EMD HO scale power. And the second announcement has me really stoked as a Burlington Northern modeler, something that no one would ever have expected 20 years ago in the HO scale market. So announcement 1A from Springfield, SD7, SD9, and SD10 locomotives. They had announced this a couple of years ago, and I did a video on it expressing my enthusiasm about the release, specifically for the Hammerhead Burlington Northern SD9s. And these were inherited, as you know, from the CB&Q. They purchased these new, and it takes, basically, if you're going to do these properly in HO scale, it takes probably 2 locomotives have to die to make one, and it's an expensive proposition. It's labor intensive. So I'm super stoked about this release, and I'm glad that Rapido is finally going to be bringing this to fruition. I do have a couple of those on pre-order, and it should be noted also that there's a Milwaukee SD10 release, Bandit for Sioux, and then the subsequent Dakota, Minnesota, and Eastern, depending on how you're counting, second or third hand owner of that SD10 locomotive. And I'm glad to see that going into production too. I don't know that I'm willing to spend the money on an SD10 for DM&E, but I believe it's super cool. I'm glad they're doing it. I'm glad to be getting the exposure. It's great. So then on to item 1B here, which is that Scale Trains over the weekend, Shane Wilson and his crew announced SD7s and SD9s. And I'm not sure, there must be an SD9 page around here somewhere. Anyway, they've announced SD7s for Union Pacific, Southern Pacific, Great Northern, and CB&Q. And as you know, CB&Q and Great Northern both merged into Burlington Northern in 1970, so all these locomotives would eventually be painted green. So I'm sure Shane and his crew plan to eventually do models appropriate for the BN as well, and probably BNSF later. So these announcements of round roof EMDs are great. I'm glad to be seeing it. And some would ask, well, HO scale has already got, depending on how you're counting, 3 releases already. We've got an Athearn, we've got the Proto 2000, which ended up being acquired by Walthers. They're calling it their Walthers Proto line now. They've got an SD7 and an SD9, and of course Athearn had that blue box SD9 that's about 100 years old now. I've got a couple of them, and they can regularly be seen on the channel here. And I've got some of those Protos too, and they're reliable units. They're easy to work on and fun to work on. And then the other offering that's out there is the BLI, the Broadway Limited. I don't really understand what Broadway Limited is doing in the market. I've never really had a need to use any of their units. Not to say that they're not good, but I've heard that there's some reliability problems with their electronics inside. Take that for what you will. So now HO scale within the span of maybe a few months here is going to actually have, depending on how you're counting, 5 offerings of SD9s. Pretty cool, you guys. So then the second announcement that has me super stoked. This is really cool, you guys. Scale Trains, Shane and his crew again have announced EMD GP30 variants. So rebuilds and things like that. Specifically, this Burlington Northern offering, which they are calling a GP39E, which is actually what the railroad called it. Essentially what this is a rebuilt GP30 that's been rebuilt. I believe it's a 12-cylinder 645 prime mover turbocharged. So essentially a GP39 -2 in a GP30 car body. What's special about these is Burlington Northern got 10 or 15 of these from Southern Railway. So you see the -2 style cab here and the -2 style nose, which EMD had replaced in the rebuild process from the Southern Railway, because the Southern Railway prototypes, as you know from the Scale Trains release, and I'll show that here, is a high hood prototype. So interesting to note that some of the earlier prototypes were rebuilt into the BN unit. Pretty cool stuff. I'm pretty well amazed that now Scale Trains has released not one but two, well, we'll be releasing not one but two
very specific prototypes for the Burlington Northern. The first one being that SD40-2B. I had also done a spot on that one I built for myself, but I'm also glad to see that that unit getting into the hands of other folks that didn't want to spend the time to build and paint one of their own. So exciting times in the hobby here, you guys. I love it. And I think both of these companies will do great things with both these releases. And I'm just interested to pull up, keep the popcorn bucket handy to see these companies fight it out over who's going to get market share on that SD9, SD7 announcement. And it's nothing but good things for the hobby.
I think that GP39E is pretty cool, right? I don't think anybody 20, maybe even 10 years ago would expect that BN modelers would have, if this comes true, two models that are very specific to Burlington Northern and high quality models at that in HO scale that are not one-offs but really close to it. I'm super stoked, you guys. This is awesome. So here's where we're going to pull the pin on this particular episode. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the content and the analysis here, smash that like button. Leave me a comment down below. Has there been an announcement recently that has you super stoked? HO scale, N scale, G scale, otherwise, for whatever railroad you model and whatever scale you model. That'd be great to hear from you down below. And finally, consider giving us a subscription, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.